So this has been all over the news, and the AP is one of my go-to outlets around this kind of stuff. But I was really inspired and moved by what is happening here. So climate campaigner Greta Thunberg and other 11 activists set sail on Sunday afternoon for Gaza on a ship aimed at breaking Israel's siege of the devastated territory. The sailing boat, which is operated by activist group Freedom Flotilla Cotillion, departed from the Sicilian port of Catania in southern Italy. It's going to try to reach the shores of the Gaza Strip in an effort to bring some aid and obviously to raise international awareness over this ongoing humanitarian crisis, the activist said at a press conference. And Thunberg said, bursting into tears during her speech, because we are doing this because no matter what odds we are against, we have to keep trying. And I got to tell you, I got goosebumps watching her. I've been a huge fan of her and her work. She's one of the first people that inspired me around climate activism many, many years ago. And I always say, you know, we have to listen to the kids coming up because they're the ones that are witnessing what is happening and having to process it in a different way. And I don't think ever since that she started connecting dots between the military industrial complex, between genocide and between the climate crisis, all of the sudden the mainstream media attention on her really went from like 100 to 0, it seemed overnight. And so I wanted to bring more attention to this story, not just because of the issue that they are bringing back towards the Palestinian people and the genocide being committed there, and really just the blockade of food and the international war crimes being committed by Israel, but also on the larger scale of recognizing that this is a young person who understands the dots that need connected and how we can't look at one issue without looking at another. And I just really applaud the people here that are really doing something very dangerous, because I think they had bombed one of these boats a few days prior. No one, I don't think, was on it, but they were clearly sending a message. What did you think when you saw this story come out? Because to me, this is really escalating the conversation. Not just, we're not talking about it anymore. Like, people are actually now trying to like do something, which is really fascinating.
I fear for their safety.
Me too.
I really do. I mean, you know, I want to just like have this conversation be centered on the bravery and the necessity of what's happening.
Yes.
But Israel has already multiple times over killed American citizens. And they faced no backlash. In fact, the media, which will tell you every single time that anyone does anything in regards to the state of Israel, basically didn't even cover these stories.
Right.
They were almost like footnotes. Like, oh yeah, this happened. Here is it on the ticker. But you know, like, it is, for me, I really hope that they are able to do whatever it is they're going to do safely, because at the end of the day, like, it is, I mean, I understand the need to do it. I understand the necessity. I understand like why you want to do it. And honestly, I feel like, you know, if they were going there with maybe like 300 or 3,000 people, like there'd be some more safety in numbers that way. But yeah, and also how disgusting it was to see a member of our Congress, Senator Lindsey Graham, basically put out a tweet that said something to the effect of, "Well, I hope that, you know, she can swim."
I know.
Basically saying that, you know, like, he's almost like egging on the Israeli military into attacking this boat as they're sailing towards Gaza. So, incredibly heroic stuff, though, because at the end of the day, we are all seeing what's happening over there right now. It is being live streamed in front of us. And I think that everyone just keeps asking, like, what else needs to be done? What else needs to be done? And it feels as though we keep trying to like ask our governments to do more. And to some of their credit here, they're doing more than they ever have. But if I'm being fair, more than they ever have is still nowhere near enough.
Yeah.
So that, you know, kind of just, it falls onto the rest of us. And like, what are we supposed to do? We can't just like watch this every day. So I really appreciate the people who have the celebrity that they do, using their celebrity in this way. And there's a lot more that I kind of want to say about this, but I wanted to kick it back to you before that, because I think that there's some extra information about what's happening with the Israeli government and Hamas right now that needs to be put into this discussion. But I'll say that here for a minute.
No, absolutely. And we can go back to that in just a second. I just wanted to elaborate on what you were saying with Lindsey Graham and other prominent people in our government that were going on X, formerly known as Twitter, and other platforms, basically, like you said, egging on the Israeli government to kill an Americans or American citizens. To
Yeah.
me, that really caught me off guard in the sense that I my breath stopped, because I kind of expect it from loudmouths on social media that are going to say what they're going to say, but for our government to be condoning violence against its own citizens, for bringing attention to a people in desperate need of humanitarian aid, felt beyond cruel and unnecessary and just truly an evil that I just couldn't wrap my head around. And it was just another thing that I just thought to myself, my God, I hope people do bring visibility to this, because I, like you said, the safety is in numbers. And even though there's only 11 of them setting sail, us talking about it, multiple people sharing about it, keeping it alive in the media, to me, is an important thing to help bring protection and clarity to what is happening. So once again, I just commend the bravery, but I am very concerned. And, this is often why young people do lead revolutions and revolts, because you haven't really lived long enough to sometimes think things all the way through like a mother would or a grandmother would or a father. It's like, I think we need young people in that way, because they just viscerally feel and react, and it jolts the rest of us to remembering that feeling of reaction and the importance of acknowledging our sense of larger humanity and interconnectedness is that visceral emotional reaction, and bypassing that fear and logic center in the brain is sometimes necessary for change to occur.
No, absolutely. And there does need to be change to occur. In fact, so much so that there have been negotiations taking place for
Yeah.
change to occur.
Yeah.
I believe the name is it's Witzok. I believe
Okay.
is the person of the within the Trump administration right now who has
Mm-hmm.
been directly communicating with the leadership of Hamas, trying to get a ceasefire deal put into place.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Recently, one of the things that Hamas, this has all been reported by Dropsite News, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that Hamas had offered was to release all of the hostages again. And that was their like bargaining chip on the table. Please do this, and we will do this. And then they would ask the Israeli military to just like completely vacate Gaza. So just completely withdraw. They will release all the hostages. Israel heard that deal, turned around and said, no, we will not do that.
Yeah.
And so afterwards, Hamas actually went back with a counteroffer saying that they would release all of the hostages. And then they would actually also withdraw their own power, saying that they would release power from from being the controlling, I think, essentially a government in Palestine or in Gaza particularly, and that they would let an independent commission kind of take their place. And so they gave an offer to the Israeli state of, we'll release all the hostages and we will no longer be in power. And that deal was also turned down. To which that has been essentially what they said that they wanted the entire time. They said they wanted to have all the hostages freed and for Hamas to no longer be in power. Hamas offered that deal and Israel still turned it down. They didn't give any reasoning. There was no reasoning reported as to why they turned that down, but I can't think of a good reason why they would do that other than the genocide is the point. And the ethnic cleansing is the point. And they just want to take this land, and they don't actually care about any of the things that they tell the rest of us that they care about with all of this. So, yes, we do need more people stepping up and trying to get in there, because I don't think that anything that Israel's saying about what their stated goals are actually true whatsoever. I think their goals are the things that we are seeing on live TV, which is just the obliteration of this entire population.
Yeah. And to me, like you said, the cruelty from this government is the point. And when I think, oh, I can't even start to think about it because it'll just make me cry. But I can't imagine. I just can't imagine what it must be like to be in that space right now. And
It's a lot.
I just hope we figure this out, because we can't continue to just see the devastation every day, all day, and not want to do something. And I'm sure that was a driving force here with, to me, this was an act of desperation to get on a boat and go there. Like that's an act of, that's desperation. Like, please, for the love of God, can we stop this? Like, these people need to eat. These children are dying. Like, this is preventable. Like, this is wild. And to your point, this is a land grab, right? This is a land grab. I don't even think they've hidden that, though. That's the thing. It's like, to me, it's like,
everyone will tell you that it's not.
Right. But I mean, they put out on AI that, the images of Trump in a golden statue and Gaza becoming this beachfront property. And like, I mean, this isn't, to me, this isn't a secret. I think that the problem here is they aren't getting the support they thought they were going to get for this atrocity. And so here we are looking at this situation in a way that I don't think the Israeli government expected people to. And so now they're just going to do whatever they want, and that's going to be that. And
they have, they're used to getting a certain level of complicity from the American people that they're not getting this time around. And I think that's been really jarring for them. You see the influence that they have over all of our institutions. I mean, it is so prevalent in both parties, not just in parties, but like in our school systems, like in our media. I mean, it is immense just how the framing is done. Like every single time that we talk about this conversation, it is always through the framing of language that they deem appropriate. And by they, I mean like their governments. I don't want to conflate. I don't want to conflate like the Jewish people and the Israeli state, because that is a problem that we're going to run into with the next conversation that we're going to have here.
Right.
And I also think it's important to note that Benjamin Netanyahu's government is essentially a more radical version of what the Trump administration is.
Yes.
It is just fact. It feels like the logical conclusion that fascism takes when it comes to, like what a government looks like under like pure fascistic state. Benjamin Netanyahu, what he has done over in Israel is, I mean, I truthfully believe that is the most just the most outright sinister government on the planet right now. I mean, even more so than Vladimir Putin's in Russia. But they're fighting for that top spot. They are definitely fighting for that top spot.
Unfortunately, I think what the connected dots are between both of those regimes is this just total disregard for humanity and for human life. And it all just being because of power and greed. And I think that really is where everything falls apart every single time with any administration. And you can trace that back to what's going on here in the United States as well. To your point, mimicking these despots is, power and greed. And I'd like to segue into the next topic and talk about that conflation, because, Desmond, one of the things I've always admired about your work is your ability to hold that two things can be true at once. And I think, independent thought and the work that I do and have done with Facts Over Fear, I try to do the same thing, where it's like, the world is not black and white and things aren't binary, right? One thing is not good and one thing is bad, and that's it. And there's, no discernible difference between the two in the sense that this stays over here and this stays over here. But we know everything is messy, and we know there are many shades of gray as we're talking about issues. And so I thought it was really important that we addressed the conversation around Gaza, and also talk about what happened the other night in Colorado, because to your point, I do think it's the responsibility of media to educate people and make sure that we're not conflating groups, and that we're being very clear that when we're talking about criticizing a government and what a government is doing, that is different from talking about an entire ethnic or religious or racial group. And I think it's important to make that distinction as things continue to escalate and as things continue to become more and more violent, not just over in the Middle East, but very much so here in the United States.